Marvel/DC, The Underground Doctor. Chapter 51, Racing Against Time. Afghanistan, the outskirts of the Hindu Kush Mountains. Wind-blown sand pelted the windows of the Toyota pickup truck, making a rasping, grinding sound. The temperature approached 45 degrees Celsius, and the air shimmered with intense heat refraction, making the distant Gobi Desert look like a distorted mirage. William parked the truck under a leeward rock wall. He killed the engine and pushed open the door, his combat boots crunching onto the scorching gravel. In the bed of the pickup lay a man bound hand and foot. His robes were tattered, he had a full beard, and there was a through-and-through bullet hole in his shoulder blade. This was a 10 Rings gang perimeter patrolman that William had happened upon on the highway 10 minutes ago. William grabbed the man by the back of his collar with one hand and dragged him like a sack of low-grade potatoes, tossing him into the shadows beneath the rock wall. "Say something I can understand," William said, crouching down with a flat tone. The man looked up, spitting out a mixture of blood and saliva as he babbled a long string of Pashto. He spoke rapidly and emotionally, interspersed with a barrage of local profanities and curses. William didn't understand. In his previous life, he was a surgeon, the most he had learned was Latin medical terminology. There was no need to master the language of someone who was about to become a corpse. Language barriers are indeed the biggest challenge in international consultations, William sighed. He pulled a photograph from the inner pocket of his trench coat. It was a color photo of the Playboy Tony Stark with a woman on each arm at a charity gala, clipped from a newspaper before he arrived. William shoved the photo in front of the man's eyes, pointed at the person in the picture, and then pointed toward the endless mountain range. The meaning was clear: where is he? The man froze for a moment upon seeing the photo, then turned his head and spat a mouthful of bloody phlegm onto William's leather shoes. He chose the hard way. William didn't waste words. He pulled a high-carbon titanium alloy scalpel from his outer thigh. His left hand precisely pinned the man's left wrist, and the blade made a light incision along the edge of the radial bone on the back of the hand. The flesh peeled back, but no major blood vessels were ruptured. William used the tip of the scalpel to hook a nerve fiber as thin as a white thread. The man was still shouting curses in Pashto. William took a small glass bottle from his trench coat pocket and unscrewed the cap. It contained high-concentration medical alcohol. A drop of alcohol fell, landing precisely on the exposed nerve. A piercing scream tore through the dead silence of the canyon. The man's body flopped wildly like a fish being electrocuted, his eyes rolled back, and the veins on his forehead looked ready to burst. This kind of pure nerve-ending stimulation was 100 times more painful than a bullet through the thigh. William waited 10 seconds before presenting Tony's photo again. This time, the man didn't spit. Drenched in cold sweat, he nodded frantically like a piston. His intact right hand rose tremblingly, pointing toward a hidden canyon on the northwest side of the mountains, while his mouth mumbled a place name incoherently. "Very good, doctor-patient communication is finally smooth," William said, putting away the photo. He took a syringe filled with potassium chloride solution from his storage ring and precisely pierced the man's jugular vein. 3 seconds later, the man suffered cardiac arrest and a painless death. This was the final mercy William, as a doctor, granted to those who cooperated. He kicked the corpse into a nearby sand pit and covered it with sand. William got into the truck, started it, and the pickup sped off toward the northwest. As he went deeper into the heartland, the terrain became increasingly rugged. William keenly noticed that the tire tracks on the ground had changed. There weren't just the narrow tire prints of the 10 Rings gang's light pickups, but also the wide tracks of heavy Hummers and all-terrain armored vehicles. These tread and tire marks were very fresh, the sand at the edges hadn't even been leveled by the wind yet. Competitors. William adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses. The situation was more complicated than expected. In fact, the Hindu Kush Mountains had already turned into a massive meat grinder. Besides William, a large number of private military contractors, PMCs, and mercenaries from all over the world were converging on this area like sharks smelling blood. Men die for wealth, just as birds die for food. On the dark web, the bounty for Tony Stark had reached a fever pitch. Pepper Potts, representing Stark Industries, had offered a staggering $200 million to bring Tony back to New York alive. This sum was enough for any mercenary team to retire immediately and buy a private island in the Caribbean. However, deeper within the dark web, there was another encrypted bounty. Amount: $250 million. Requirement: eradicate every living thing within this Ten Rings gang outpost. Special note: Tony Stark must die. The poster was anonymous, but any top-tier mercenary in this circle could guess who the benefactor was with their eyes closed. Justin Hammer, the arch-rival of Stark Industries, dreamed of seeing Tony die in the desert. There was yet another bounty worth $300 million, and its poster was none other than Obadiah Stane. This veteran of Stark Industries and Tony's own uncle was the mastermind behind the entire kidnapping. He had long been selling the company's most cutting-edge weapons to the Ten Rings gang behind Tony's back. This time, he had directly hired the Ten Rings gang to eliminate Tony, attempting to legitimately take over the entire business empire. But Obadiah was an old fox. He knew the Ten Rings gang was insatiable. If Tony didn't die, or if the Ten Rings gang left any evidence of the transaction, he would face life imprisonment by the FBI. Only the dead can keep secrets. So, he had secretly added this silencing bounty, letting professional mercenaries wipe out the Ten Rings gang and bring back Tony's head in the process. 2 birds with 1 stone, clean and simple. 20 kilometers away from the Ten Rings gang's cave base, a PMC squad with black snake patches on their sleeves was resting in a weathered rock area. The leader was a scarred Russian man, currently holding a rugged military tablet and reviewing the latest satellite topographical maps. "Boss, the Ten Rings gang's controlled zone is just ahead," a sniper said, chewing gum as he cycled the bolt of his M24 sniper rifle. "Which contract are we taking? Saving him or killing him?" "Killing him," the Russian leader replied without looking up. "That female assistant from Stark Industries offers a lot, but the risk of transporting a pampered young master out of a war zone in one piece is too high. Besides, that old dog Obadiah would surely give us trouble afterward." The leader put away the tablet and patted his HK-416 assault rifle. $300 million to take the lives of a few hundred terrorists plus 1 playboy. It's a good deal. Pass the word, once we enter the canyon, it's free fire. Leave no survivors. Back to William's side. He abandoned the Toyota pickup 5 kilometers from the canyon entrance. The engine noise was too likely to give away his position in the open valley. William carried a backpack, draped in a silver optical camouflage medical blanket. This piece of equipment from the system could perfectly refract surrounding light once activated, blending his form completely into the background of yellow sand and rock. As long as he didn't move violently, it was extremely difficult to detect with the naked eye. Like a ghost, he moved quickly along the shadows at the edge of the canyon. Intense gunfire suddenly erupted ahead. It wasn't sporadic rifle fire, but the continuous roar of heavy machine guns and the explosions of RPG rockets. William stopped, found a high point, and lay flat on the scorching rock. Peeling back a corner of the camouflage blanket, he took out tactical binoculars to observe below. In a hollow below, a brutal skirmish was taking place. A group of Ten Rings gang members in turbans, wielding old AK-47s, were being pinned down by a well-equipped mercenary squad. The mercenaries' tactical proficiency was high. They used interlocking fields of fire, precise sniper picks, and even micro-drones for battlefield reconnaissance. The weapons in their hands were exclusively loaded with special armor-piercing rounds produced by Stark Industries. The Ten Rings gang had no way to fight back, corpses littered the ground. "It seems quite a few people are looking for Mr. Stark," William mocked inwardly. This group of mercenaries clearly wasn't here to save anyone. They shot the Ten Rings gang members with extreme decisiveness and delivered coup de grace shots to the wounded, showing no intention of leaving survivors for interrogation. This was a classic cleanup tactic. If this group found the cave first, Tony would definitely be riddled with bullets. Then his system mission, and the 8 inner gates he dreamed of, would be completely forfeit. No sportsmanship at all, William said, putting away his binoculars. He didn't get involved in the chaotic battle below. Going head-to-head against a professional armed force of dozens would only waste time and ammunition. The dark silver ring at the base of William's left index finger shimmered faintly. A MAC-10 submachine gun equipped with a suppressor appeared in his hand. He wrapped the optical camouflage medical blanket tightly around himself again, bypassed the engagement zone, and followed the route the captive had pointed out toward the deepest part of the canyon. Time had become the most lethal chip on the table. He had to enter that cave before the mercenaries finished clearing the outer perimeter. Chapter 52, Tony's Little Embarrassment. The gunfire deep in the canyon was chaotic. The Black Snake PMC squad's tactical advancement was extremely professional. Their crossfire network tore the Ten Rings gang's outer sandbag fortifications to shreds. William, draped in an optical camouflage medical blanket, pressed against the rock wall as he moved forward. This system-produced item had a refractive index of 100%, making thermal imagers and night vision goggles completely useless against it. He was like a puff of invisible air, passing right between 2 mercenaries who were in the middle of changing their magazines. A sniper lay prone on a weathered rock high above, finger on the trigger of an M24, searching for Ten Rings gang machine gunners through his scope. William appeared silently behind him. A titanium alloy scalpel slid from his sleeve and precisely pierced the gap between the sniper's first and second cervical vertebrae. With a gentle flick of the blade, he severed the vital centers of the medulla oblongata. The sniper didn't even experience basic neural twitching, instantly becoming a breathless hunk of meat. William withdrew the blade and casually tucked the M24 sniper rifle into his storage ring. This thing would fetch a good price back in Gotham. Below, the Russian leader was gesturing, signaling the assault team to flank from the side. William leapt from the rock. Mid-air, a MAC-10 submachine gun was already in his hand, silencer attached. Puff puff puff, the extremely muffled gunshots were perfectly masked by the explosions on the battlefield. The 9mm bullets specifically sought out areas not covered by ceramic armor plates, the carotid artery, armpits, and the femoral artery on the inner thigh. In 3 seconds, 5 assault team members were down, the blood spraying from their wounds drying quickly on the high-temperature sand. The Russian leader sensed something was wrong. He had lost contact with his assault team. He whipped his head around, but saw nothing in his line of sight except for the swirling yellow sand. A light breeze brushed past, and the leader felt a chill at his throat. He instinctively reached for his neck, only to feel a razor-thin incision. His trachea and carotid artery had been severed simultaneously. High-pressure blood burst through the constraints of flesh, spraying over 2 meters away. The leader's knees buckled as he collapsed, hands clutching his neck desperately. A sound like a broken bellows wheezed from his throat, and he died without ever seeing who had killed him. The mercenaries' command structure was instantly paralyzed. The remaining dozen or so men fell into extreme panic, firing aimlessly in all directions. William didn't waste bullets trading fire with them. Using the optical camouflage for cover, he moved through the crowd like a surgeon performing a precise dissection on an operating table. A slice to sever an Achilles tendon here, a thrust through a pleural cavity to cause a tension pneumothorax there. It was a one-sided physical transcendence. 2 minutes later, the canyon outskirts fell silent. The Black Snake squad had been completely wiped out. What on earth happened? The dozens of remaining Ten Rings gang members hadn't even recovered from the fear of being suppressed by the mercenaries before they met the god of death. William didn't even bother firing his gun. When harvesting these disorganized stragglers who lacked tactical discipline, a scalpel was more efficient than bullets. Bodies littered the ground, and blood flowed like a river. William stepped over the chest of a corpse and crossed the barbed wire at the cave entrance. The air blowing from the ventilation ducts carried a heavy scent of engine oil and charcoal. Deep inside the cave, the sound of hammering had long since stopped. Tony Stark, drenched in sweat, was snapping the last piece of crude leg armor onto his knee joint. The micro-servo motors let out a strained mechanical grinding sound. On a nearby dilapidated computer screen, a progress bar was slowly climbing. 60%. The exchange of fire outside had first been extremely dense, then eerily fell completely silent. This silence was more hair-raising than the sound of guns and artillery. "They're coming." Ho Yinsen pushed up his cracked glasses. He pulled out an AK-47 he had hidden under the bed beforehand, racked the bolt, and chambered around. Tony looked up, the arc reactor in his chest flickering with a ghostly blue light. "Don't go, Ho Yinsen. Stick to the plan, stay behind me." The progress bar jumped to 75%. Ho Yinsen shook his head and didn't look back. "Your armor still needs time to boot up. If they rush in, we won't even have a chance to fight back. Go achieve your redemption, Stark. Don't waste the life I'm buying for you." Ho Yinsen gripped the rifle with both hands and strode toward the heavy iron door. He was a scholar, and his posture for holding a gun wasn't even standard, yet his back at this moment radiated a sense of finality. The iron door was pushed open forcefully, letting out a piercing screech of friction. Ho Yinsen rushed into the corridor, closed his eyes, and squeezed the trigger tight, bracing for the expected hail of bullets. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. No bullets came. Ho Yinsen opened his eyes, his vision adjusting to the dim light of the corridor. His foot stepped on something soft. Looking down, he saw the bald leader of the Ten Rings gang who had frequently tortured them. The bald man's eyes were wide open, and there was a razor-thin red line across his neck, with not even a single extra drop of blood leaking out. Ho Yinsen sucked in a cold breath and looked up toward the end of the corridor. Over 30 corpses lay scattered about. There were 10 Rings gang members in local robes, as well as fully armed, tactical vest-wearing white strangers. The manner of death was surprisingly consistent, no large-scale entry wounds or blast injuries, all of them had their vital nerves or blood vessels severed in an extremely short amount of time. At the end of the corridor stood a man. William pulled off the optical camouflage medical blanket, folded it neatly, and stuffed it into his trench coat pocket. He adjusted the gold-rimmed glasses on his nose and took out an individually wrapped alcohol wipe from another pocket. Tearing open the package, William slowly and methodically wiped the blood off his high-carbon titanium alloy scalpel. His white lab coat looked exceptionally striking under the dim yellow lights. Ho Yinsen raised the AK-47, the muzzle shaking violently, his palms drenched in cold sweat. "Don't move. Who are you? What happened here?" William didn't stop his movements as he tucked the clean scalpel back into the strap on his outer thigh. He tilted his head, observing the thin man of Arab descent before him. "I'd like to ask, where is Tony Stark?" William spoke in a flat tone, ignoring Ho Yinsen's interrogation. Ho Yinsen swallowed hard, his finger trembling on the trigger. This man had single-handedly killed everyone outside. He had no idea if the person was friend or foe. Just then, the iron door behind them let out an extremely heavy, dull boom. Bang! The entire iron door was sent flying by a massive mechanical force, slamming into the corridor wall and shaking loose a large cloud of dust. Tony Stark, wearing the Mark I armor cobbled together from scrap metal, missile casings, and tank tread parts, charged out with incredibly heavy steps. With every stride, the ground trembled. "Ho Yinsen, I'm here to save you. You bastards! Get away from him!" Tony's voice echoed inside the iron helmet, carrying a sort of desperate, bridge-burning madness. "Let's see how you like my invincible flamethrower." Tony raised his thick mechanical arms. The igniter at his wrist clicked, and with a clack, an orange-red flame shot out half a meter high. The aviation kerosene in the high-pressure fuel tank was ready to go, poised to turn the entire corridor into a sea of fire at any moment. Then, through the narrow observation slit of the helmet, Tony saw the situation outside. There were no swarms of terrorists, no machine gun nests waiting in formation. There were only corpses littering the ground, covering the entire corridor. And standing in the middle of the pile of bodies was an Asian man in a neat trench coat and gold-rimmed glasses, looking at him with an expression one might use for an idiot. Tony's movements froze. His mechanical arms stopped mid-air. Pfft! The arrogant little orange flame at his wrist, lacking further fuel, flickered awkwardly twice and died out. Only the scent of unburned kerosene remained in the air. The scene was deathly silent. William casually tossed the used alcohol wipe onto the ground, looked at the bloated tin can, and sighed. "Mr. Stark, your invincible flamethrower seems to be leaking a bit." William straightened his collar. "If the performance is over, please come out of that iron bucket. We need to leave before the Ten Rings Gang's reinforcements arrive." Chapter 53, Mission Accomplished. The air in the corridor was a mixture of poorly combusted aviation kerosene and the heavy stench of blood. Through his thick iron faceplate, Tony Stark stared at the copper pipe on his wrist that was still leaking fuel. This was so damn embarrassing. He swore a solemn oath in his heart that he would never install flamethrowers on any future Mark armors, not even if he died. This primitive weapon, constrained by physical fuel, was not only inefficient but also failed at critical moments. Cough. Tony cleared his throat, trying to regain some of his aura as the head of Stark Industries. He lifted his heavy mechanical head and looked through the narrow observation slit, sizing up William, who stood amidst a pile of corpses. A white lab coat, gold-rimmed glasses, and no gun in his hand. "Who are you?" Tony's voice sounded muffled, vibrating through the iron plating. "Are you here to save me, or to kill me?" William slid his hands into his trench coat pockets, stepped over the headless corpse of a Russian mercenary, and stopped 3 meters away from the Mark I. "A mercenary," William replied expressionlessly. "I took a $200 million bounty from your personal assistant. She required me to bring you back to New York in one piece, $1 million deducted for every hair missing." Hearing about his assistant and the $200 million bounty, Tony's tense shoulders slumped. It was Pepper. Only Pepper Potts would use such a simple and crude method of throwing money around to find him at a time like this. "Nice job, Pepper," Tony muttered under his breath. He turned his head to look at the trembling Ho Yinsen behind him, who was still holding an AK-47. "Ho Yinsen, put the gun down," Tony called out. "Don't be nervous, he's one of us." Ho Yinsen leaned against the rough rock wall, his chest heaving violently. He looked at the corpses scattered everywhere, then at the Asian doctor who didn't have a single drop of blood on him. His fingers stiffly left the trigger, and the barrel lowered toward the ground. "Now, Mr. Stark." William raised his wrist and glanced at his watch. "If you don't want to wait for the Ten Rings Gang's main force to bring heavy artillery and level this mountain, get out of that tin can quickly. It's too heavy and will seriously slow down our evacuation speed." "This isn't a tin can, it's the Mark I," Tony retorted, reaching for the mechanical latches on his back. "Whatever one it is, take it off," William said in a flat tone. Ho Yinsen stepped forward, grabbed a rusty wrench, and helped Tony unscrew the pneumatic valves on the back. Steam billowed out, and the gears emitted a piercing grinding sound as the thick iron armor split open to the sides. Tony struggled to climb out from within. He was soaked in sweat, his undershirt clinging tightly to his body, and the miniature arc reactor in his chest, emitting a faint blue light, was completely exposed to the air. William walked a few steps closer, his gaze falling on the reactor. "Palladium," William stated the name of the material. "A crude electromagnet structure used to stop shrapnel from entering your heart. You're very brave. Palladium poisoning is eroding your blood. At this dosage, you won't live more than 6 months." Tony panted heavily, wiping soot from his face. He looked at William in surprise. "You're not just a killer, you understand physics and medicine too." "I am a doctor," William corrected. "Killing is just to clear obstacles for my consultation. Now, follow me closely." "What? Doctors can be mercenaries too?" Tony exclaimed directly. "Why can't a doctor be a mercenary?" "Tony Stark, you should broaden your horizons," William mocked without looking back. Tony was momentarily speechless. He was one of the world's top billionaires, yet he was being mocked by a doctor. As the three of them walked out along the corridor, Tony felt his stomach churn as he passed the bizarrely mutilated corpses. "Are you sure he's a doctor and not some professional assassin?" Tony asked Ho Yinsen in a low voice. "I only know that his killing technique is more precise than my surgeries," Ho Yinsen said, wiping cold sweat from his forehead. "These 10 Rings gang members and white mercenaries didn't even have a chance to draw their guns before their vital nerves and blood vessels were severed. One hit, one kill, with no wasted movement. How exactly do you do it?" Tony couldn't help but ask. He was a staunch materialist who believed in the power of technology, but the slaughterhouse-like scene before him exceeded his understanding. "Basic anatomy," William said as he stepped over a corpse. "The human body has more weaknesses than you imagine. As long as you find the right spot, a scalpel is more efficient than a Gatling gun." As they reached the outer edge of the canyon, a wave of heat hit them. The sunlight stung Tony and Ho Yinsen's eyes, which had been in darkness for so long. William walked to the Toyota pickup truck he had abandoned and pulled open the door. "Get in." Tony and Ho Yinsen climbed into the back seat. The pickup's engine roared, and the tires kicked up clouds of yellow sand as it sped away from the 10 Rings gang base. The temperature inside the cabin was extremely high, and the air from the air conditioner smelled of dust. Tony leaned back against the seat, watching the desert recede outside the window, and let out a long breath. The air of freedom, though mixed with the smell of gunpowder and oil, was much better than that dark, gloomy cave. "Do you have a satellite phone?" Tony looked at William in the driver's seat. "I need to call Pepper to let her know I'm safe and tell her to get that $200 million check ready." "No," William said, one hand on the steering wheel while the other pulled a bottle of mineral water from his trench coat pocket and tossed it back to Tony. "This is a combat zone, satellite signals are monitored by both the military and terrorists. Do you want to lead the 10 Rings gang's pursuers right to us?" Tony unscrewed the cap and drank half the bottle. His cracked lips were moisturized, and he handed the remaining water to Ho Yinsen. "Where are we going?" Ho Yinsen asked. He looked at this mysterious Asian doctor with a heart full of awe. "Kabul," William replied. "There's a U.S. military base there. I'll drop you off at the base entrance, and you can handle the rest yourselves. My mission is only responsible for getting you out of this desert alive." Tony raised an eyebrow. "Just like that? You're taking $200 million and you don't plan to provide VIP escort service back to New York?" $200 million only buys your life," William said, looking at Tony through the rearview mirror. "As for escort services, that costs extra." Tony laughed. He liked these clearly priced transactions. At least it was more real than those politicians who spoke of benevolence and morality but stabbed you in the back. "No problem. As long as I get back to New York safely, money isn't an issue." Tony leaned back and closed his eyes. "However, Dr. William, right? I'm very interested in your medical skills. You said I won't live more than 6 months. Is there a solution?" "Yes," William said, stepping on the gas as the pickup bumped through the dunes. "But I charge a lot." "The one thing Stark Industries isn't short of is money," Tony replied confidently. "I don't take checks," William interrupted. "I want Stark Industries medical equipment, specialized medicine, and the blueprints for that miniature arc reactor of yours." Tony opened his eyes and stared at the back of William's head. The arc reactor was Stark Industries' highest secret and currently his only lifeline. This Asian doctor had a staggering appetite. Blueprints are off the table, Tony refused flatly. That's my private property. As for the medical equipment and specialized medicine, you can make a list. Deal. William didn't insist on the blueprints. He had started with a high price to leave room for negotiation. His real goal was Stark Industries' medical resources to provide logistical support for his clinic in Gotham. The pickup drove through the desert for 3 hours. The sun gradually sank in the west, and the temperature began to drop. A line of black armored vehicle silhouettes appeared on the horizon ahead. It was a U.S. military patrol. William stepped on the brakes, stopping the pickup behind a sand dune 500 meters away from the armored vehicles. Get out. William pulled out the car key and tossed it to Tony. The U.S. military defense line is ahead, walk over yourselves. I have other business to attend to, so I won't be accompanying you. Tony caught the key, looked at the armored vehicles in the distance, and then at William. Are you sure you're not coming to the base with us? Tony asked. The military will provide you with the best protection, and besides, you need to pick up Pepper's check in person. I'll go to New York to find her, William said, pushing open the door and stepping out of the pickup. Remember your promise, Mr. Stark. I'll have someone deliver the list for the medical equipment and medicine to Stark Tower. By the way, as an after-sales service, I'll give you a piece of intel for free. Tony raised an eyebrow, all ears. Pepper paid $200 million to save you, William said at a steady pace, as if giving medical advice. But someone on the dark web offered $300 million to wipe out every living thing at that stronghold. Specifically, it was noted that you must die. The ease on Tony's face vanished. They bought your head. The publisher used an encrypted account, and the funds flowed through money laundering networks in over a dozen countries. The source can't be traced, William added. Tony's fingers tightened slightly, showing his emotional instability. Use that genius brain of yours and think about it carefully, William said, looking Tony in the eye. The Ten Rings gang are just a bunch of bandits huddled in the desert. Who could bypass Stark Industries' regulatory system to quietly ship your company's most advanced Jericho missiles and batches of weapons to Afghanistan and sell them to these terrorists? Tony fell silent. His breathing became heavy. And the cynicism in his eyes completely faded, replaced by a bone-chilling coldness. In a vast business empire, the outflow of weapons required passing through countless stages: production, inventory, customs, and transport. Someone who could hide all this and pull it off could never be an outsider. It seems you already have a candidate in mind, and it's exactly who you're thinking of. Obadiah Stane, William stated the name directly, mercilessly puncturing Tony's last illusion. Tony snapped his head up, staring intently at William. Obadiah, his father's comrade in arms, a veteran of the company, and the man Tony had always regarded as a close uncle. That's impossible. Tony gritted his teeth, the words squeezed from deep in his throat. In medicine, there's a condition called selective blindness, where patients instinctively refuse to accept a reality that exceeds their psychological capacity to endure. William took half a step back, increasing the distance between them. Don't be in a hurry to open champagne and celebrate when you get back. Wear a couple of extra layers of body armor when you sleep at night, and don't eat anything handed to you by others. With that, William turned and walked into the depths of the desert. Tony watched his receding back and took a deep breath, shaking his head. This Asian doctor was not only terrifyingly skilled but also had an extremely eccentric way of doing things. Let's go, Ho Yinsen. Tony sat in the driver's seat and started the pickup. We're going home. As William walked over the dunes, the dark silver ring at the base of his left index finger flickered with a faint light. An optical camouflage medical blanket draped over him, and his figure completely merged into the night. Mission accomplished. The system panel unfolded on his retina. Emergency main quest completed, rescue Tony Stark. Quest reward, Taijutsu's secret technique 8 inner gates, complete version, has been issued. A massive flow of information surged into his brain. Knowledge regarding human meridians, chakra pathways, and muscle fiber reinforcement rapidly reorganized in William's mind. He stopped, closed his eyes, and felt the dormant, violent power within his body. 8 inner gates. The gate of opening, the gate of rest, the gate of life, the gate of pain, the gate of limit, the gate of view, the gate of wonder, and the gate of death. The opening of each gate meant a multifold increase in power, as well as destructive damage to the body. William opened his eyes. There was no trace of fear in his black pupils, only the absolute rationality of a doctor. With this set of taijutsu combined with his top-tier medical skills, he finally had a true foundation in this chaotic world. Whether it was Gotham's Batman or New York's Kingpin. If anyone dared to cause trouble at his clinic, he would let them experience what physical salvation felt like. William adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses and turned to walk toward Kabul. He needed to find a place to properly study this new medical tool. Chapter 54, The First Gate of the 8 Inner Gates. The night wind of Afghanistan swirled with coarse grit, hitting the heavily weathered stone pillars with a rustling grinding sound. The temperature plummeted after the sun went down, and the diurnal temperature difference turned this desert into a natural cooling box. William was draped in that silver optical camouflage medical blanket. Moving through the Gobi Desert on the outskirts of the Hindu Kush Mountains like an incorporeal ghost. Confirming that there were no U.S. military drone patrol routes or 10 Rings gang infrared detection equipment within 10 kilometers, he stopped and chose a hollow surrounded by towering rock walls on 3 sides. It was secluded enough. He pulled off the camouflage blanket, folded it, and put it back into his storage ring. William took off his deep black windbreaker, then his white lab coat and shirt. The night wind blew against his bare upper body, and a layer of fine goosebumps quickly appeared on the surface of his skin. He didn't rush into action, but sat cross-legged on the cold sand, closed his eyes, and began to sort through the massive flow of information that had appeared out of nowhere in his mind. Taijutsu's secret, 8 inner gates. In the eyes of William, a former surgical attending physician, this set of combat techniques from another world was essentially an extremely crazy and anti-human physiological overload experiment. The human body is a precision-running machine. To ensure the machine isn't burned by the energy it generates, the cerebral cortex sets extremely strict safety thresholds. In daily activities, ordinary people can only use about 20% of the strength of their entire body's muscle fibers. Once this limit is exceeded, the brain forcibly cuts off nerve impulses, manifesting as muscle weakness or severe pain. This is to prevent bones from being snapped by excessively contracting muscles. What the 8 inner gates does is forcibly dismantle this set of safety valves. The first gate, the gate of opening. Located in the brain region. Analyzing from the perspective of modern medical anatomy, opening this gate means forcibly lifting the cerebral cortex's inhibition of motor neurons. Acetylcholine will be released frantically in the synaptic cleft in an overclocked state, forcing more than 600 skeletal muscles throughout the body into a state of 100% contraction. The cost is extremely high: rhabdomyolysis, myoglobinuria, acute renal failure, and multi-organ failure. If an ordinary person dared to play like this, the end result would be turning themselves into a corpse with cooked internal organs. Truly a lethal skill, William opened his eyes and commented in a low voice. He was a doctor and knew the limits of the human body better than anyone, and even better how to pull someone back from the brink of death. The dark silver ring at the base of his left index finger flickered with light. A pile of things appeared on the ground: 2 pressure injectors loaded with high-concentration adrenaline, a bottle of targeted cell activator intercepted from within Stark Industries, 2 cans of the same pretty good healing aerosol sold to Bruce Wayne, and even a portable AED, automated external defibrillator. William picked up the AED electrode pads and unhesitatingly stuck them to his left chest and below his right ribs. He set the machine to automatic pacing mode for abnormal heart rates. Medical contingency plans must be in place, one can never be too careful. Killing oneself while testing a new ability would be too stupid and an insult to a doctor's professional standards. Having done all this, William stood up, feet shoulder-width apart, toes gripping the grit on the ground tightly. Adjusting his breathing inhale, exhale. His heart rate gradually dropped, maintaining a steady pace of about 60 beats per minute. Let's begin. William focused his mind, guiding the dormant bioelectric signals in his body up the spinal nerves and straight into the brain region. Target, the gate of opening. Impact. Hiss. The moment the restriction was forcibly torn away, William gasped. Pain, a pain that couldn't be accurately described with medical terms. It wasn't the sharp pain of a scalpel cutting skin, nor the dull pain of damaged internal organs. It was a high-frequency spasm caused by billions of muscle fibers throughout the body contracting under overload at the same time. A faint crackling sound came from his ears. That was some of the fragile muscle fibers snapping. Capillaries dilated excessively due to the sudden surge in blood pressure, and William's originally fair skin became visibly congested, showing an abnormal dark red color. As soon as sweat seeped out of his pores, it was directly evaporated by the high temperature emitted from his body surface, turning into a layer of faint white mist surrounding him. His teeth were clenched tight, the muscles of his cheeks bulged, and traces of blood seeped from his gums, flowing down the corners of his mouth. The cerebral cortex lost its function of blocking pain, every nerve ending was frantically sounding the alarm, and William clenched his fists tightly, nails digging into his palms, forcing himself to adapt to this destructive overload state. After enduring the initial physiological rejection period, changes began to manifest. His vision became clearer than ever before. His night vision significantly surpassed human limits. On a sand dune 100 meters away, a sand crab was waving its claws, and the fuzz on its leg segments was clearly visible in the dim light. His hearing was infinitely amplified. The whistle of the wind through the holes in the stone forest, the friction of rolling grit, and even the sound of his own blood rushing through his vessels were all clearly audible. The most direct change was power. A violent power, almost enough to burst his body, surged through his limbs and bones. Every muscle was like a spring compressed to the limit, ready to go. William looked down at his hands, these hands that had once held scalpels under shadowless lamps and performed countless precision sutures now overflowed with a brutal aesthetic capable of destroying everything. He needed an outlet. He took a step forward. The sandy ground beneath his feet made an overburdened thud, and a pit more than 10 centimeters deep was stomped out, with radial cracks appearing on the edges of the sand. William walked to the edge of the hollow. In front of him was a weathered rock more than a person tall. This rock had endured hundreds of years of wind and sand erosion in the Afghanistan desert. Its outer layer was extremely hard, and its internal structure was dense. No extra movements, no build-up of power, and no fancy fighting stance. William simply raised his right hand, his waist muscles exploded, and power was transmitted along his spine to his scapula, then pushed from his upper arm to his fist. A basic straight punch. Fist met rock. Bone and flesh underwent the most primitive physical collision with the hard stone. Crack. A very short, crisp sound. At the spot hit by the fist, a shallow pit first appeared on the hard rock surface, followed by spider-web-like cracks spreading frantically from the point of impact. With stone dust falling, the cracks quickly expanded and penetrated through. The entire person-high rock split into two from the middle. The left half lost its support and slammed heavily onto the sand, kicking up a large cloud of dust. William withdrew his fist. The skin on his knuckles was broken, seeping blood and revealing the white periosteum beneath. But his brain in an overclocked state forcibly suppressed the local pain feedback. He looked at the pile of broken stones, his chest heaving violently. This level of physical destructive power in the past, he would have needed to use high explosive shells from Stark Industries or shoulder a Javelin anti-tank missile to achieve it. Now, he did it with just his physical body and a plain straight punch. And this was only the first gate. What would it be like if he opened the third gate, the gate of life, or the fifth gate, the gate of limit? Just as the emotion of wild joy surfaced in his mind, his body's self-protection mechanism finally reclaimed control. Close the gate of opening. The brain's restrictions fell back into place. A tidal wave of weakness instantly flooded all his nerve endings. It felt like performing high-intensity back-to-back surgeries for 48 hours straight, plus running a full marathon. William's legs went weak, and he knelt on the sand. His muscles were so sore that even lifting a finger was extremely difficult. The lactic acid buildup in his body had reached a terrifying peak, and his breathing was as ragged as a broken bellows. No wonder Might Guy ended up in a wheelchair. William leaned against the remaining half of the rock, panting heavily, and laughed at himself. This thing really isn't meant for normal carbon-based organisms to practice, let alone taijutsu ninjas whose living cells are several times more than those of ordinary people in the real world wouldn't dare try it lightly. He struggled to reach out and grab the bottle of targeted cell activator on the ground, bit off the cap, and poured it directly into his mouth. The slightly sweet liquid slid down his esophagus and was quickly absorbed by the gastric mucosa. High-activity repair factors began to travel throughout his body with the blood circulation, repairing those broken muscle fibers and damaged capillaries. Next, he picked up the can of Pretty Good Healing aerosol and sprayed it frantically on his broken knuckles and sore muscles. The icy mist touched his skin, bringing a burst of sharp pain, which then turned into warmth, relieving the local swelling. After resting for a full half hour, William finally felt his strength recover by 30%. He tore off the AED electrode pads from his chest and put all the medical waste back into his storage ring. He put his shirt and white lab coat back on, and finally draped on the windbreaker. He pushed the gold-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose, and the black eyes behind the lenses regained their usual rationality and coldness. The test results were perfect. Although the side effects were huge, with this trump card, he finally had the capital to flip the table in that asylum full of perverts in Gotham or that gang-ridden cesspool in Hell's Kitchen. If anyone dared to come looking for trouble at the clinic at 22 Lake Street, he wouldn't mind letting them experience what medical-grade physical aesthetics meant. William looked up at the stars twinkling in the Afghanistan night sky. Calculating the time. The Falcone family's medical equipment should be arriving at the clinic in Gotham soon, and over in New York, the stock of Stark Industries would likely rebound for a while once Tony returns. It's time to go back. Wait. Did I forget something? Never mind, if I forgot it, it must not be important. Meanwhile in Gotham, a certain Haji Bat was constantly hissing because he had been stood up by a certain unscrupulous doctor. Degree. Chapter 55, The Day That Changed America. Pushing open the door to the clinic at 22 Lake Street, the stale air unique to Hell's Kitchen rushed toward him. Jessica was sitting behind the triage desk with her legs crossed, holding a box of half-eaten pizza, her eyes fixed on an old CRT television. Hearing the friction of the metal door hinges, she turned her head, a half slice of pepperoni still dangling from her mouth. Seeing William's sand-stained windbreaker, she swallowed the sausage. 4 days. Jessica looked at the calendar on the wall, then back at William. You call this a vacation? Did the Hawaiian sun melt your wallet, or did you get deported for beating up a security guard at Waikiki Beach? William threw his backpack onto the sofa, took off his coat, and hung it up. The UV rays over there are too strong, it's not good for skin maintenance. William walked to the water dispenser and poured a cup of cold water. Besides, looking at too many bikinis on the beach causes visual fatigue. It's better to come back and look at your face, which is full of the simple beauty of the working class. Jessica rolled her eyes and pushed the pizza box a bit further away. Give me a break. You don't look like you've been to an island at all. Your soles are covered in yellow sand, and your clothes smell like gunpowder smoke. You didn't go to some trench in the Middle East to dig for oil, did you? A woman's intuition was often absurdly accurate. William didn't respond, walking to the television with his paper cup. A press conference was being broadcast live on the screen. In the center of the frame, Tony Stark wore a slightly oversized suit, his right arm in a cast and suspended from his neck by a sling. He wasn't standing behind the lectern, instead, he sat cross-legged on the steps in front of the podium without any sense of decorum, holding a Burger King cheeseburger with a bite taken out of it. The crowd of reporters below was agitated, their camera flashes turning the scene into a sea of white light. Mr. Stark, what exactly did you experience in Afghanistan? Regarding the fluctuations in the company's stock price during your disappearance, do you have anything to say to the shareholders? Tony swallowed the burger in his mouth and raised his uninjured left hand, signaling for the room to be quiet. I never saw my father. I always thought he was a cold and ruthless man, but I only now understand that he built weapons to protect this country. Tony's speaking pace was slow, his voice husky from his recent recovery. But I saw what my weapons were protecting. I saw people who shouldn't have died, killed by the Jericho missiles I was so proud of. The entire room fell silent. Pepper Potts stood to the side and slightly behind him, her brow furrowed into a tight knot. Obadiah Stane's face, which had been wearing a kind smile, froze completely at that moment. So, I have decided. Tony stood up, threw the remaining half of his burger into a nearby trash can, and walked to the microphone. To permanently shut down the weapons manufacturing division of Stark Industries. Effective immediately. Until I find a new direction for the company, a direction that can truly bring peace to this world. The room erupted in an uproar. Reporters crowded forward like madmen while security personnel struggled to maintain order. Obadiah rushed onto the stage, attempting to grab the microphone to smooth things over, but the live signal had already broadcast those words to the entire world. Insane. Jessica stared at the screen, spitting out the word. Did that playboy's brain melt in the desert sun? If Stark Industries stops selling arms, are they going to switch to selling burgers? He's very sober. William crushed the paper cup in his hand and threw it into the trash. More sober than he's been in the last 30 years. The television feed cut back to the studio. The CBS News anchor was sweating profusely, caught off guard by this sudden breaking news. He quickly connected with two resident political and military commentators. The screen split into three. This is a disaster. The military expert on the left slammed the table, spittle flying everywhere. Stark Industries weapon sales account for 20% of the global market. Even more fatal is that 50% of the U.S. military's annual research and development for new weapons is highly dependent on Stark Industries laboratories. Tony Stark's single sentence has directly set back the Pentagon's armament update plans by 10 years. The political commentator on the right pushed up his glasses, his tone sharp. This isn't just an earthquake for the defense industry, it's a heavy blow to the American economy. Stark Industries is a major taxpayer. Once the weapons division closes, hundreds of thousands of workers face unemployment, and Wall Street's capital chains will break. The ones most anxious aren't his personal assistant or the board of directors, but the politicians on Capitol Hill. Tony Stark has pushed himself and the entire company into the eye of the storm. Below the screen, the Stark Industries stock chart gave the most direct reaction. The curve, which had just turned green because of Tony's return, drew a tragic vertical red line the moment he said the words permanently shut down, triggering the circuit breaker mechanism. Tens of billions of dollars gone just like that. Jessica clicked her tongue. I don't understand the world of the rich. But if he pulls this, will the US government and military let him off? The game of capital has only just begun. William walked behind the triage desk and flipped open the blank medical record book. The military won't easily give up this fat piece of meat, and Obadiah certainly won't watch his business empire shrink. Tony's coming days will be even more grueling than they were in that cave in Afghanistan. At this point, William paused. He had saved Tony because he wanted Stark Industries' top-tier medical equipment and specialized medicines. Now that Tony had closed the weapons division, the internal situation would surely be a mess. He wondered if the promised equipment would be affected. Go deal with that used Ford outside. William instructed Jessica without looking up. The license plate is cloned, don't leave a trail. You just got back and you're already bossing people around. Jessica grabbed her leather jacket from the back of the chair. Muttering as she walked out, capitalists are harder to serve than terrorists. The clinic door closed, and the room returned to silence. William opened a drawer and took out the platinum business card with Bruce Wayne's name printed on it. The matters on the Marvel side were temporarily concluded. Tony needed time to clean house and develop the Mark II armor. As for himself, it was time to keep his appointment with that Gotham bat. Calculating the time, today was Friday. It had been over 24 hours since Bruce Wayne's scheduled Thursday afternoon house call. He wondered if the man had lost his temper. William walked to the iron door labeled Medical Supplies Warehouse. He pressed down the handle, and the deep blue vortex formed once again. Passing through the spatial portal, the unique air of Gotham City, a mix of chemical plant exhaust and damp, moldy odors entered his nostrils. In the underground room of 22 Lake Street, the dehumidifier was still working tirelessly. Inside the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, Maggie's breathing was steady, and her vital signs data pulsed rhythmically on the display screen. Selina was napping on the triage desk. Hearing footsteps, she sprang up like a startled cat, still clutching a mop handle tightly in her hand. After seeing it was William, she let out a long breath and tossed the mop handle aside. "You're finally back." Selina rubbed her eyes. "Falcone's people delivered the goods last night. 2 entire heavy-duty trucks." William looked in the direction she pointed. The once spacious underground clinic was now packed full of over a dozen massive wooden crates. The crates were printed with the logos of Wayne Medical Group and military exclusive supplies. Falcone's efficiency was indeed high. This batch of equipment would have taken even the best private hospital in Gotham City over half a year of approval processes to acquire. "Good work." William walked over and checked the seals on several crates. They were intact. "There's a bit of trouble, though." Selina leaned against the oxygen chamber, her expression odd. "The fat guy who delivered the goods, some guy named Cobblepot, left a message." "What did he say?" "He said His Excellency Falcone is very satisfied with the goods you provided and hopes to conduct a second transaction as soon as possible." Also Selina paused. "He said things haven't been peaceful in Gotham lately. There's some freak in a black cape going around breaking the bones of mobsters everywhere. He told you to be careful when you go out at night. And that rich playboy from before, Bruce Wayne, has been calling every day asking me where you went and if you forgot your appointment with him." From his tone, he sounds quite unhappy. Chapter 56, Batman is angry. The humming of the dehumidifier in the underground room echoed through the empty space. William looked at the dozen or so huge wooden crates and rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. Falcone's efficiency was commendable, but piling these precision instruments in a dark, damp underground room was simply a desecration of medical equipment. "You've worked hard these past few days," William said, turning to look at Selina. "Don't unpack this equipment yet. I need to find a reliable construction team to renovate the second basement level. As for Cobblepot, make him wait. I've just finished stocking up, and I need time to process it." Selina toyed with the mop handle in her hand and pointed upstairs. "What about Master Wayne? When he called this morning, his tone sounded like he wanted to tear this clinic down. Just how much trouble did you get yourself into?" "Just a minor doctor-patient communication barrier," William bluffed casually. In reality, he knew clearly that standing up Bruce Wayne was definitely an extremely suicidal thing to do in Gotham. Although that rich young master was a disguised playboy, the desire for control and paranoia in his bones were no better than the patients in a spiritual hospital. Moreover, William knew very well the real purpose of Bruce asking him for a house call. It wasn't to treat the butler for some rheumatism at all, but purely to get him to Wayne Manor, his absolute home turf, and interrogate him about his actions in Falcone's study. The emergency in Afghanistan had disrupted his schedule. This was indeed his own fault. William pulled the platinum-embossed business card from his lab coat pocket, walked to the triage desk, picked up the old-fashioned landline phone that often leaked electricity, and dialed the number on it. The phone was answered after only half a ring. "Wayne Manor. Who are you calling for?" A hoarse yet vigorous voice came through the receiver, with the standard London accent, the enunciation as clear as if he were broadcasting BBC News. "Alfred Pennyworth. This is William from 22 Lake Street," William said in a steady tone. "I'm looking for Master Wayne." "Or, looking for you, Mr. Pennyworth." There was a very brief pause on the other end of the line. "So it's Dr. William." Alfred's voice instantly took on an extremely rich, British-style sarcasm. "I thought you had lost your way on the road to the Upper East Side, or had been kidnapped by some blind thug in the East End. Master Bruce has been worried sick about you these past few days, and even considered buying up all the land in the East End to conduct a carpet search." The old agent's sharp tongue was truly well-deserved. "I went out of town to source some special medication, and the flight was delayed." William threw out the excuse without blushing or skipping a beat. Anyway, his passport had entry and exit records, so they wouldn't find any issues even if they checked, although they were entry proofs from another universe. "Standing up Master Wayne was my dereliction of duty. Please tell him that my schedule is now clear, and I can make a house call at any time. Please wait a moment." Alfred did not hang up, and faint footsteps could be heard through the receiver. At this moment, deep beneath Wayne Manor, in the Batcave, Bruce, shirtless, was performing high-intensity punching training against a heavy sandbag. Every punch carried an extremely violent kinetic energy, and the leather on the outer layer of the sandbag had already developed fine cracks. He had been very irritable these past few days. That Asian doctor named William had vanished into thin air. He had used Wayne Enterprises' satellite network and the GCPD's internal surveillance, and had even personally worn the Batman suit to tear the East End apart, yet he hadn't found a single hair of William. This variable, completely out of his control, made Bruce feel extremely uneasy. A person who possessed top-tier medical technology, terrifying physical skills, and could come and go freely in the study of the Gotham Mafia godfather suddenly disappearing, the risks hidden behind this were too great. "Master," Alfred said, walking to the edge of the training area while carrying a silver tray with a towel. "The missing person has returned." Bruce delivered a heavy punch that sent the sandbag swinging high, then stopped his movements and turned his head, sweat sliding down his perfect muscular lines. "Who?" "That Dr. William who likes to use pretty good healing." Alfred handed over the towel. "He just called, claiming that he went out of town to source goods, causing his flight to be delayed, and that he now has time to treat your old butler suffering from severe rheumatism." Bruce took the towel and wiped his face, his eyes instantly becoming extremely sharp. "Sourcing goods? Flight delayed?" Bruce sneered. There were no entry or exit records for William in the customs system for the past few days. This man didn't even draft his lies. "Tell him to make the house call now." Bruce threw the towel back onto the tray and strode toward the changing area. "Send a car to pick him up. Tell him to stay at the clinic and not go anywhere. If the car doesn't pick him up within half an hour, I'll go and smash his door down myself." "As you wish, Master. Do you need me to prepare a defense system? After all, this doctor doesn't look easy to deal with." "Just prepare your acting skills, Alfred. You are a patient now." Alfred sighed, picked up the communicator, and reconnected to the line. "Dr. William, thank you for your call." The butler's tone returned to that proper, polite formality. "Master Bruce is very pleased with your return. He requests that you fulfill your house call promise now. A private car has already departed and is expected to arrive at Lake Street in 28 minutes. In addition, the master asked me to convey a direct message: do not disappear without a trace this time, otherwise you will bear the consequences." A busy signal came from the receiver. William put down the phone and rubbed his temples. This rich young master certainly had quite the temper. "How's the situation?" Selina leaned in, her eyes sparkling with gossip. "Did that Bruce Wayne give you a dressing down? After all, no one in Gotham dares to stand up this top billionaire." "Well, you might be disappointed. The rich young master has already sent a private car to pick me up." William opened a drawer and took out a black leather medical bag. "Help me look after the shop, especially the equipment in the underground room. If anyone comes to cause trouble, handle it according to the old rules and state our name." Selina made an okay gesture. She now had blind confidence in this boss's strength. William opened the medical bag and began to count the items: stethoscope, blood pressure monitor, pupil pen. These were the conventional instruments used for show. In the compartment, he tucked in 2 high-carbon titanium alloy scalpels, 3 high-concentration anesthetic needles, and a few tubes of adrenaline for emergencies. Even if he was going to Wayne Manor, his defensive preparations couldn't be dropped. That place was Batman's lair, and heaven knows what traps and mechanisms were hidden inside. Once packed, William changed into a clean white shirt and put on his signature black trench coat over it. 20 minutes later, a black extended version Rolls-Royce Phantom drove onto Lake Street, looking extremely out of place. A luxury car of this level appearing in the East End was like a white swan falling into a sewer. The homeless and drug dealers on both sides of the street poked their heads out one after another, their greedy gazes lingering on the car logo, but after seeing the license plate number, they all shrank back. In Gotham, some cars simply cannot be touched. The vehicle stopped steadily in front of the clinic. The driver, wearing a crisp black suit and white gloves, got out and opened the back door. "Mr. Will, please get in." The driver's attitude was respectful, and his posture was extremely standard. William carried the medical bag, walked out of the clinic, and without any wasted words, sat directly into the car. The door closed, and the soundproof glass completely cut off the noise from the outside. The interior space of the car was huge, the leather seats felt excellent, there was vintage red wine in the car refrigerator, and the air was filled with a faint scent of cedar. The vehicle started smoothly and drove in the direction of the Upper East Side. William leaned back against the seat and closed his eyes to rest. He had been working non-stop these past few days, first going to Afghanistan to save Tony Stark, then activating the first gate of the 8 inner gates for extreme testing. His body was actually in a state of extreme exhaustion. But he couldn't rest yet. Bruce Wayne had set up this hung-men banquet. He must have prepared countless questions waiting for him. Regarding the fight in Falcone's study, regarding his identity and background, and even regarding those medical technologies of his that didn't belong to this era. "Soldiers come, block with generals, water comes, cover with earth," William murmured to himself in his heart. Chapter 57, Clashing Heads. The Rolls-Royce Phantom drove through the towering iron gates. Tires crunched over the gravel driveway with a subtle friction sound. The car came to a steady stop in front of the main building's porch. The driver pulled the door open. William stepped out of the vehicle carrying a black cowhide medical bag. Alfred Pennyworth stood on the steps. His tailcoat was perfectly tailored, and his silver hair was combed without a single strand out of place. "Dr. William, welcome to Wayne Manor." The old butler bowed slightly, his etiquette impeccable. William sized him up, his gaze falling on the butler's straight back. "Mr. Pennyworth, you look in excellent health. The core strength required for such a posture does not match the physiological characteristics of a patient with severe rheumatism and joint pain. Are you sure you need me to open my bag and perform a joint puncture for you?" Alfred turned around, pushed open the heavy oak doors, and made a gesturing motion. "Master Bruce is waiting for you in the study." The two walked side by side down a corridor covered in handmade wool carpets. William switched his medical bag to his left hand. "So, today's clinical appointment is cancelled." The master's exact words were, "In front of a professional doctor who can suppress a grown man with one hand, clumsy disguises are meaningless." Alfred's tone was steady, carrying a pure London accent. He has more important matters to discuss with you in person. Portraits of the Wayne family ancestors hung on both sides of the corridor. The frames were gilded, and the oil paintings were rich in color. This old-fashioned British decor. In a city like Gotham that rains year-round, the cost of maintaining walnut wall panels must be quite high, William commented casually. The Wayne family never skimps on maintaining history, Alfred replied. Just like the master, who is always trying to maintain the crumbling order of this city. Even if the process is full of resistance. Order is built on absolute strength, not a few oil paintings hanging on a wall. William looked straight ahead. At the end of the corridor was a double mahogany door. Alfred stopped, curled his index and middle fingers, and knocked thrice on the door panel. The rhythm was even. Bruce's voice came from inside, "Enter." Alfred pressed the brass door handle and pushed the door halfway open. "Dr. William, please." William stepped into the study. The click of the door lock engaging sounded behind him. The old butler did not follow, leaving the space to the two of them. William stood in place, his eyes sweeping over the room's furnishings. A massive fireplace, burning pine, a high-backed leather chair, and a wide mahogany desk. This routine felt familiar. A few days ago, Falcone had done the exact same thing. First, the butler led the way, then a private meeting. Even the smell of the firewood burning in the fireplace was much the same. Do rich people in Gotham share the same interior designer? Or has this Godfather-style meeting process become some kind of unwritten industry standard? William rolled his eyes inwardly, complaining bitterly that rich people just love to show off. Bruce Wayne sat in the leather swivel chair behind the desk. He wasn't wearing a flashy bespoke suit, but rather a deep grey cashmere sweater with sleeves rolled up to the elbows, revealing well-defined forearms. "Sit." Bruce pointed to the single-seater sofa across the desk. William walked over and sat down, placing his medical bag by his feet. The sofa's padding was soft, but his back remained straight, not sinking in with gravity. Bruce interlaced his fingers, resting them on the desk. Dr. Williams' business scope is truly broad. A few days ago, you were showing off your skills in His Excellency Falcone's study, and then you vanished without a trace. I was bringing in a batch of much-needed medical equipment. William leaned against the sofa armrest, his tone calm. For a clinic to run, someone has to manage the supply chain. Stocking up. Bruce leaned forward, hands pressing against the desk. I utilized Wayne Enterprises' logistics network and security resources to search every port, airport, and train station in Gotham City. I even checked the shady smuggling docks in the East End. There was no sign of your name, no record of your entry or exit, and no information on any transportation you boarded. Bruce stared into William's eyes. You were like a drop of water evaporating into the air. And then today, you reappeared out of thin air at 22 Lake Street. Dr. William, are your supply channels so deep that even the Wayne family's intelligence network cannot penetrate them? Master Wayne's desire for control is overstepping a bit. William met Bruce's gaze. I am a doctor, not your employee. Where I go and how I travel does not need to be reported to Wayne Enterprises. Besides, hundreds of people enter and leave Gotham City through irregular channels every day. No matter how large your intelligence network is, it cannot be omniscient. Bruce didn't argue. He opened a drawer, pulled out a file folder, and tossed it onto the desk. The folder wasn't sealed, and several high-definition photos slid out. The photos showed over a dozen large wooden crates marked with the logos of Wayne Medical Group and Military Specials, stacked in the underground room of 22 Lake Street. The angle was from the clinic's ventilation vent. Sent by the Falcone family. Bruce pointed at the photos. Your so-called stocking up is taking over Falcone's black market resources. Do you know that half of the equipment he gave you is controlled material stolen from Wayne Medical Group? William glanced at the photos. This bat's peeping habit was beyond help. He even installed microcameras in the clinic's vents, and that idiot Selena didn't notice at all. I only care about efficacy, not the source. William retracted his gaze. Falcone paid the medical fees, and I provided the corresponding medical services. A fair trade. As for the source of the materials, that is a matter for the GCPD. I have no obligation to recover stolen property for you. Aren't you afraid of bringing trouble upon yourself? Bruce raised his voice. You are helping Gotham's biggest mob boss extend his life. I have saved many people. William interlaced his fingers and placed them over his abdomen. Including a certain wealthy young master whose ribs almost broke a few days ago. In my clinic, there are only patients, there is no distinction between mob bosses and entrepreneurs. If you called me here today just to discuss medical ethics, then this house call is utterly meaningless. Bruce fell silent. He looked at the man before him who was completely impervious to persuasion. William's psychological defenses were extremely high, showing no flaws, and his words were airtight. That night, Bruce changed the subject, his fingers tapping on the desk. You blocked my attack. Your reaction speed and power delivery techniques don't belong to any known fighting style. When anatomy is applied correctly, the human body is a machine that can be precisely disassembled. William's speaking pace was slow and steady. I know which muscles are the weakest and which nerves are the most sensitive. Fighting and surgery are essentially the destruction and reorganization of the human structure. As long as you find the right point of force, a surgeon can take down a heavyweight boxer. Just anatomy. Bruce stood up, walked around the desk, and stood before William. His 1.88-meter height exerted a powerful sense of pressure. Your movements then defied the common sense of ergonomics. With that kind of extreme backward lean and instantaneous explosive power, an ordinary person's spine would have snapped long ago. Natural talent, combined with diligent practice. William looked up at him. Master Wayne, if you are so interested in my physical structure, I don't mind charging you to take a vial of blood for testing. However, the price is very high. William thought, as expected of the little blackie. Letting you see is already enough, yet you actually want to know my secret techniques? How could I let you know? Bruce looked down at him from his height. The distance between them was less than half a meter, and the air was thick with the smell of gunpowder from neither side backing down. Chapter 58, About Gotham. Bruce looked down at him from above. The distance between them was less than half a meter. And the air was thick with the scent of gunpowder as neither side was willing to back down. William did not retreat. He sat in that overly soft armchair with his legs crossed, his right index finger rhythmically tapping his knee. Master Wayne, William spoke, breaking the silence in the study. Your curiosity is misplaced. Instead of studying my muscle exertion habits, you should look out the window more often. William raised his left hand and pointed to the large floor-to-ceiling window of the study. Gotham's continuous rain was snaking down the bulletproof glass, fragmenting the distant city skyline. You've looked into my background and questioned why I provide medical equipment to Falcone. Fine, let me ask you something. William pulled back his hand, leaned forward, and rested his crossed hands on his knees. How do you view the city of Gotham? And how do you view a man like Carmine Falcone? Bruce stood up straight and crossed his arms over his chest. Gotham is rotten to the core, Bruce replied instantly, without the slightest hesitation. Corruption, greed, and crime. Falcone is the biggest lesion. He bribes the police director, controls local judges, and lets drugs and weapons flood the streets of the East End. He is the source of all evil, the tumor that most needs to be excised from this city. This was Batman in his early days. Full of passion, armed with martial arts brought back from the Himalayas and a determination to punish evil, he saw the world in black and white. William let out a light chuckle. He shook his head and reached for the water glass on the coffee table. A textbook answer. Out of 100, I'd give you a 10. And that 10 is only out of consideration for the $100,000 in registration fees you contributed to my clinic. Bruce was stung by this evaluation, his brow furrowing deeply. You've simplified an extremely complex socio-pathological issue into the logic of a street thug fighting over turf. William took a sip of warm water to moisten his throat. In clinical medicine, if a doctor encounters a late-stage patient with multi-organ failure, what would they do? Just pick up a scalpel and cut out the largest tumor in one go. Bruce didn't answer. Having received a top-tier education, he understood the logical trap behind this metaphor. If you did that, the patient wouldn't even have a chance to get off the operating table, they'd die right during the anesthesia phase. William put down the water glass, the glass base struck the marble tabletop with a crisp clink. Falcone isn't a tumor, he's Gotham's immune system, even if that immune system is mutated and diseased. Immune system? Bruce scoffed, making no effort to hide the mockery in his tone. He's out there murdering and arsoning, draining the last drop of blood from the common people at the bottom. He's also setting the rules. William looked Bruce directly in the eye. The old-school mafia values a balance of interests. He doesn't cross certain lines, and he controls the intensity of violence. If someone starts firing shots wildly in the East End and breaks his rules, the GCPD doesn't even need to respond. Falcone's men will sink that rule breaker into Gotham Bay first. William stood up and walked to the fireplace. The burning pine emitted a pleasant oily fragrance, dispelling the damp cold clinging to his clothes. If Falcone had died in his study that night, what do you think would happen to Gotham tomorrow? William turned around, his back to the fire. The Gotham gangs would go into an all-out war to seize territory. Powerful but unprincipled leaders would take the opportunity to rise. All those lunatics, drug dealers, and killers that Falcone keeps suppressed in the sewers would come crawling out. To fight over the power vacuum, they'd set off car bombs in the city center, poison the water treatment plant, and spray school buses with submachine guns in broad daylight. Bruce leaned his hands on the edge of the desk. These deductions struck the weakest link in his plan. He had only thought about punishing evil and lacked a complete post-disaster reconstruction plan. Do you think that by putting on that uniquely styled black suit at night, running into the alleys to break the legs of a few gang thugs, and sending Falcone to Blackgate Penitentiary, Gotham will be at peace? William mercilessly exposed Bruce's greatest secret. Bruce's pupils constricted sharply, and his right leg muscles tensed instantly as he took a defensive stance. William waved his hand, signaling him to relax. Don't be nervous. I have no interest in leaking stories to the Gotham Gazette. I'm just a doctor who does what he's paid for. Your nighttime extracurricular activities have nothing to do with me, as long as you don't bring trouble to 22 Lake Street. Bruce suppressed the shock in his heart and regained the rhythm of the conversation. According to you, we should just let Falcone continue his blood-sucking? Do nothing. This is a long-term treatment plan, not emergency room violent resuscitation. William walked back to the desk, pulled out the soft armchair, and sat down again. In medicine, the prerequisite for excising a mutated immune system is having a brand new circulatory system that can perfectly replace it. Until you have the ability to underwrite the entire underground order of Gotham, Falcone must live. William paused, giving Bruce time to digest this. While he's alive, the commoners in the East End at least know who to pay protection money to. Once they pay, they can live in peace. They don't have to worry every night before bed that some junkies who just finished a hit will break down their door and blow their brains out. Bruce fell into a long silence. The only sound in the study was the crackling of the pine wood. You stand at the top of Wayne Tower looking down at Gotham, and you see crime. William's voice slowed down, losing some of its aggressiveness and gaining a bit of the coldness of stating facts. I stand in the muddy water of Lake Street, and I see survival. Falcone pays the dock workers, it's a pittance, but it buys bread. If you uproot Falcone and the docks grind to a halt, how will those workers feed their children? With Wayne Enterprises handouts? Can Wayne Enterprises feed the entirety of Gotham? Bruce, go see for yourself. Go see the slums that are just one street away from the Wayne building, go see how the people there live. If you spend your whole life thinking that sending every criminal in Gotham to prison will bring peace, then you will never change Gotham. For the children at the bottom of Gotham, survival itself is a war. Most of them have been homeless since childhood, surviving by stealing, begging, and dealing drugs. The police don't protect them, instead, they often bully them. Gangs recruit them as lackeys, exploiting their ignorance and survival instincts. Many children have seen violence and death countless times before they even reach their teens. Then these children grow up and join the gangs, completing the closed loop of Gotham's crime cycle. This is the fundamental reason why Gotham's crime rate has long topped the list of cities in the United States. William's questions crashed heavily in front of Bruce. He had lived a life of luxury since childhood. The pain of losing both parents gave him an extreme hatred for evil. He had wandered the world, learning how to fight and how to utilize fear. But the one thing he had never learned or seen was how the people at the bottom struggle to survive in the mire. Master Wayne, William gave his final conclusion. You have money, a sense of justice, and a high-tech set of gear. But Gotham's illness cannot be cured by playing vigilante. Violence only creates temporary fear, it cannot establish a lasting order. If you want to truly understand Gotham, you might as well live in the slums for a few days. Perhaps then you'll have a different perspective. Chapter 59, The Bet. Just as Bruce was about to say something more, he was interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. Knock, knock, knock. The study door was knocked, and Alfred entered, pushing a brass dining cart. The old butler ignored the low pressure in the room. He elegantly placed 2 bone china teacups on the table. Fine British black tea, Master Wayne. A good remedy for your internal heat. Lately, your temper has been fiery enough to burn through the roof of the manor. Alfred poured the tea and pushed 1 cup toward Bruce's hand. Next, he took out a glass, poured another cup, and placed it in front of William. Dr. William, here is your tea. I hope the young master's rude hospitality hasn't affected your mood. Mr. Pennyworth's black tea is very fragrant. William picked up the warm water and took a sip. Master Wayne was just curious about medical theory, we had a very pleasant exchange. Alfred bowed slightly and pushed the cart to the side, having no intention of leaving. Bruce looked at the steaming cup of black tea in front of him but didn't touch it. He looked up at William. You are a thorough realist, Bruce evaluated. I am a doctor. I am only responsible for the living, William replied crisply. Falcone paid the consultation fee. His being alive fits my current interests and the stability needs of Gotham at this stage. That is why I appeared in his study. If you feel this violates your moral purity, you can kick me out of the manor right now. I won't refund the house call fee. William had a punchable "what are you going to do about it" look on his face. Bruce leaned back in his swivel chair, hands clasped over his stomach. He looked at William with less hostility and a more complex layer of scrutiny in his eyes. This person was dangerous. Not only was his physical skill terrifying, but even more frightening was his impeccable logic for survival. He navigated between black and white, using a scalpel to precisely cut through Gotham's network of interests. You said just now that I should go live in the slums for a few days, Bruce spoke, his pace slow and his words emphasized. What would I see there? Besides pimps, drug dealers, and addicts who would stab someone in the stomach for $10, what else would I see? Bruce's questioning carried a suppressed rage. He couldn't forget the 2 gunshots in Crime Alley, nor the image of the pearl necklace scattered in a pool of blood. He had seen the ugliest side of Gotham, and he didn't believe he was missing anything. William leaned back in the single sofa, shifting into a more comfortable position. What would you see? William laughed, a hint of helpless mockery in his voice. You'd see Gotham's other operating logic. you'd see what those guys you classify as scum actually went through before they became scum. Bruce leaned forward, hands on his knees. I don't need to experience crime, I'm responsible for stopping it. Those children are controlled by drug dealers, women are forced to stand on street corners, and the elderly freeze to death in the winter. Falcone uses dirty money to maintain this man-eating system, and you are helping him prolong his life. Stop it! William countered, his tone taking on a sharp, metallic quality. That's a game of whack-a-mole. Today you break a mugger's leg in an alley, and tomorrow there will be 2 hungrier people on the street with guns. You stop the action, but you can't solve the motive. William stood up, walked to the desk, pressed his hands on the marble surface, and looked down at the richest man in Gotham. Master Wayne, you're used to looking at the world through Wayne Enterprises data reports. You think that by locking the bad guys in Blackgate Penitentiary, Gotham's crime rate will drop. But you don't understand at all, crime rate isn't a number, it's the manifestation of the cost of survival. Bruce looked up at him, his gaze cold and hard. Since you understand it so well, let's make a bet. William extended a finger and tapped the desk. Go to the slums, or Crime Alley. Don't take that black card that could buy half of Gotham, don't take the communicator Alfred prepared for you, and don't wear this custom-made cashmere sweater. Put on a set of ragged clothes dug out from a trash heap, and don't bring a single cent. Stay there for a week. Bruce frowned. Are you questioning my survival skills? Bruce asked back. I've hunted bears with my bare hands in the snows of Siberia and lived for a month in the Amazon jungle eating bugs and wild fruit. Do you think the streets of Gotham can stump me? That's nature, William interrupted, ruthlessly tearing through Bruce's confidence. Nature has laws, and beasts have habits. As long as you master the skills, you can survive. But the bottom of Gotham has no laws. William straightened up and brushed the dust off his hands. What you have to face isn't wind, snow, or beasts, it's starving members of your own kind. Go try it. Try to fight for a spot under a bridge to block the wind, or wait in line at a relief station for 3 hours just for a bowl of sour oatmeal. See if you choose to fight back and kill him, or choose to starve yourself when you've been hungry for 3 days, don't even have the strength to stand up, and are faced with a vagrant holding a knife to steal your last half piece of bread. William stared into Bruce's eyes. Go try it, Master Wayne. See if your black and white theory of justice can get you a full meal in the sewers. See if you can survive 7 days in that quagmire on your own. Bruce fell silent. The only sound in the study was the crackling of pine wood burning in the fireplace. He didn't argue. William's words were harsh. But every sentence precisely pierced the blind spots of his logical chain. He had received the world's top combat training and studied criminal psychology and forensics. But he truly didn't know how a penniless vagrant was supposed to survive a winter night in Gotham. He was used to looking down from a high place and deterring through fear. But he had never truly stepped into those shadows. If he didn't even understand why those people committed crimes, what right did he have to judge them? A long time passed. Bruce leaned back in his swivel chair and rubbed his brow. His originally tense shoulders relaxed, revealing a deep sense of exhaustion. Alfred, Bruce spoke, his voice somewhat raspy. The old butler stepped forward from the shadows. See Dr. William out. Bruce didn't look at William, his gaze fell on the investigation report about 22 Lake Street on the desk. Yes, Master Wayne. Alfred bowed. William picked up his cowhide medical bag from the floor and smoothed the wrinkles on his trench coat. The black tea was good. William walked toward the door. For the next house call, it would be even better if it came with some scones. The hallway. The wool carpet swallowed their footsteps, and the classical oil paintings on both sides looked somewhat gloomy under the dim wall lamps. Alfred led the way, his steps steady. Dr. William, Alfred suddenly spoke, breaking the silence between them. William turned his head. In the study just now, Master Bruce took your words to heart." Alfred's tone was no longer that prickly British humour, but instead conveyed a steadiness and sincerity unique to the older generation. "Whether he took them to heart or not is his business, I'm only responsible for finishing what I had to say." William weighed the medical bag in his hand. "After all, for this house call today, I didn't even get travel expenses. For a losing business deal, I have to at least get some satisfaction from speaking my mind." Alfred chuckled and shook his head. "The young master is very stubborn." Alfred stopped and turned to look at William. After Master Thomas and Madame Martha left, he only had one thought left in his heart. He poured all his anger and pain into his hatred for the evil in this city. Alfred sighed, his gaze passing over the family oil paintings on the hallway wall, seemingly recalling long-buried memories. He wandered all over the world and learned many things: combat, tracking, interrogation. He turned himself into a weapon against evil. But he is too young, possessing an idealistic, reckless innocence. He thinks that as long as he knocks down the bad guys and sends them to prison, Gotham will become better. Alfred looked directly at William, his grey-blue eyes full of gratitude. Few people can change his mind, because no one dares to tear away the fig leaf of his theory as directly as you did. The directors of Wayne Enterprises only know how to flatter him, the GCPD police only see him as a rich kid playing around, and the news media think he's just a worthless playboy. You are the first person to make him truly think about the underlying logic of Gotham." William looked at this old butler. A man who had lived on the edge of a blade was now worried about his child like any ordinary father. "Mr. Pennyworth," William spoke, his voice flat. "A weapon has no thoughts, only the person holding it does. If he stays in the ivory tower of Wayne Manor forever, or only goes out at night in that black suit to beat people up, he will never become the character Gotham needs." "You are right." Alfred nodded. "He needs to go see the real Gotham, not the one in his imagination. I should warn you, though." William continued walking forward. "The slums is not a fun place. If he really goes, you'd better keep an eye on him. I don't want to find the fainted body of Gotham's richest man in front of my clinic in a few days." "I will." Alfred kept pace with William. "Although I do not approve of him putting himself in danger, I believe this is a transformation he must undergo to become that symbol." Pushing open the oak doors, it was still raining outside, mixed with the salty smell of the sea breeze. A Rolls-Royce Phantom was already parked under the porch. The driver held a huge black umbrella and opened the rear door. "Dr. William, thank you for your candor." Alfred stood on the steps and bowed slightly. "Forget about favors, cash is better." William threw the medical bag into the car and turned to look at Alfred. "Watch your young master. If he really goes to the slums, remember not to collect his body too early, that kid is tougher than he looks." A standard British smile appeared on Alfred's face. "I will have the scones ready for you next time." William sat in the car, and the door closed. The black sedan drove into the curtain of rain and quickly disappeared at the end of Wayne Manor's driveway. Chapter 60, Street Missions and the New Apprentice. The rain hadn't stopped yet. Wind squeezed through the gaps of the rolling shutter door at 22 Lake Street, bringing with it the unique briny scent of Gotham Bay and the acrid tang of chemical plants. William pushed open the door and tossed the black umbrella he had swiped from Wayne Manor into a plastic bucket by the door. Water dripped steadily from its tip. The dehumidifier in the underground room was still working hard, emitting a monotonous hum. Selina was leaning over the triage desk peeling an orange. Hearing the noise, she looked up, her gaze passing over the pile of orange peels as she sized William up. "Sent back in a Rolls-Royce Phantom," Selina remarked indistinctly as she popped a segment of orange into her mouth. The junkies peering out of their windows in the East End nearly had their eyes pop out. "So, how was it? Does the Gotham billionaire's mansion have diamond-encrusted toilets? Did that dim-witted Master Wayne give you any trouble?" William took off his damp black trench coat and hung it on the rack. The carpets were soft, and the black tea was good. William walked to the sink and turned on the faucet to wash his hands. I didn't see the toilets. As for Master Wayne, he should be busy rummaging through trash cans for clothes right now. Selina paused mid-action, nearly choking on the orange juice. She patted her chest, her face full of confusion. Looking for clothes? Did he go bankrupt? We made a bet. William pulled a paper towel to dry his hands. For the next week, shift your area of activity away from the Upper East Side and the East End Black Market. Go around the slums, Crime Alley, and the homeless camps under the Cross-Sea Bridge. Selina froze, the half-orange in her hand suspended in mid-air. To the slums. Selina tossed the orange onto the table, her voice rising 2 octaves. What for? To fight starving junkies for moldy bread? Or to watch pimps collect protection money? Dr. William. Did they give you some kind of potion at Wayne Manor? She hopped down from the barstool, walked over to William, and began counting on her fingers. Falcone just sent over 2 truckloads of medical equipment, and that fat bastard Cobblepot is still secretly snooping into your background. The GCPD has increased patrols in the East End recently. With all these big shots to keep an eye on, you want me to go watch bums in the slums? In Selina's street logic, the value of information was proportional to the target's net worth. What useful information could be squeezed out of a place like the slums that even rats despised? What Falcone needs most right now is to integrate that equipment. He wants Gotham to be as steady as a mountain more than anyone else. William opened a drawer and put his medical bag inside. As for Cobblepot, he's a clever opportunist. Until he figures out my hand, he'll only wag his tail and beg, he won't make any reckless moves. William turned around and leaned against the triage desk. The real unstable factors are often not in the skyscrapers, but in the sewers. Just go if I tell you to. Make a few rounds every day, gather some intel from the bottom rungs, and keep an eye out for someone while you're at it. Selina rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. Not going. I have to stay here and watch the shop. She found an unassailable excuse, jerking her chin toward the Stark Industries hyperbaric oxygen chamber in the corner. Maggie is still lying in there. She needs constant care, I can't just leave her alone in the underground room. At the mention of her sister, Selina's tone softened. Maggie was her only weakness in Gotham, and the sole motivation behind her risking her life to steal in the Upper East Side. William didn't argue. He left the triage desk and walked straight to the hyperbaric chamber. Through the transparent blast-proof glass, Maggie was sleeping peacefully. Her once paper-pale cheeks now held a hint of healthy flush. Her breathing was steady, the rise and fall of her chest perfectly matching the physiological indicators of a healthy person. William glanced at the monitor data next to her. Blood oxygen saturation, 99%. Heart rate, 72. Lung impedance values had dropped back to the safe range. Open the door, William instructed. Selina hurried over, entered the code on the control panel, and pressed the pressure relief valve. With a slight hiss, the high-pressure pure oxygen inside the chamber was gradually replaced by normal air, and the door popped open. The change in airflow woke Maggie up. She rubbed her eyes, her long eyelashes fluttering as she sat up, looking somewhat dazed at the 2 people standing outside. Dr. William. Sister. Maggie's voice was still a bit raspy, but the previous bellows-like wheezing was gone. William took out a medical flashlight, peeled back Maggie's eyelids to check, then put on a stethoscope and pressed it against her back. Take a deep breath. Maggie obeyed. Inhale, exhale. One more time. Harder. Air flowed smoothly through the trachea into the alveoli. No rowels, no murmurs. William took off the stethoscope and hung it around his neck. The bronchial spasms caused by congenital asthma have been resolved, and the pulmonary infection foci have been completely absorbed. Targeted cell activators have repaired the damaged mucosal tissue, William provided a professional clinical diagnosis. In layman's terms, she's cured. Aside from needing a mask during extremely dusty weather, she'll have no problems running, jumping, or living a normal life. Selina stood rooted to the spot. She looked at her sister's rosy cheeks and listened to that steady, strong breathing. Over the past decade, the near-death feeling of suffocation Maggie experienced during every attack had been Selina's lingering nightmare. The specialists at Gotham City Hospital had asserted that Maggie wouldn't live past 20. And now, William was telling her nonchalantly that she was cured. Selina lunged forward and pulled Maggie into a tight embrace, her strength almost enough to snap Maggie's ribs. She buried her face in her sister's shoulder, her own shoulders shaking uncontrollably. Maggie gently patted her sister's back, her own eyes reddening. William stood to the side, not disturbing the sister's tender moment. He turned to the medicine cabinet and prepared a few bottles of routine vitamins and immune-boosting oral solutions. When Selina finally calmed down and stood up with red-rimmed eyes, William pushed the medicine bottles across the table. The illness is cured, but what comes next is the real trouble. William leaned against the cabinet, his tone flat. She's 18. What do you plan for her to do? Follow you as a thief on these streets, cracking safes for the rich in the Upper East Side? Selina bit her lip and said nothing. There are no fairy tales at the bottom of Gotham. For a girl with no background, no education, and decent looks, simply walking the streets is a sin in itself. She could protect her sister for a while, but not for a lifetime. Her personality is too soft, her heart too kind. William pointed out Maggie's fatal flaw with surgical precision. A personality like that won't last 3 days in Gotham. Gangsters and street pimps love nothing more than to swallow clean prey like her whole. Selina clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. She knew William was telling the truth. So, I have a proposal. William pointed to several unopened crates of medical equipment nearby. The clinic's workload has been expanding lately. I can't handle it all alone. The instruments Falcone sent need someone to organize and maintain them. I also need help with routine triage, dispensing medicine, and basic wound dressing. William looked at Selina and threw down his real bargaining chip. I plan to have her stay at the clinic as my apprentice. Room and board included, with a monthly salary. I'll teach her medical basics, first aid, and even the fundamentals of surgery. As soon as he said this, the entire underground room fell into a deathly silence. Selina's eyes widened, staring at William as if he were a monster. In Gotham, what profession is the most respected? Not the police, not the judges, and certainly not the politicians. It's the doctors. Especially the black market surgeons who can stuff intestines back in and stitch them up after a gang shootout. Any person scraping by on the streets, even the most cold-blooded killer, wouldn't easily offend a highly skilled doctor. Because you never know when you'll be clutching a bleeding stomach and kneeling at a clinic door begging for help. Selina had seen firsthand how terrifying William's medical skills were. If Maggie could study medicine under him, even if she only learned 10 or 20% of his skill, she would have a get-out-of-death-free card in this dark city. Gangs would treat her as an honored guest, and the homeless would see her as an angel. This was more precious than giving her a mountain of gold. Are you serious? Selina's voice trembled, and her whole body shook slightly along with it. I never joke about medicine. You know I've been looking for a nurse assistant, otherwise, that recruitment notice wouldn't have been posted on the outside wall for so long. William pulled out a brand new white lab coat and tossed it onto the hospital bed in front of Maggie. Put this on. Starting tomorrow, memorize the charts of human bones and muscle distribution. If you can't memorize them, I'll dock your pay. Maggie held the white coat, her eyes shining brilliantly. She looked at her sister, then at William, and nodded vigorously. Thank you, Dr. William. I will definitely work hard to learn. Selina let out a long breath. The massive stone that had weighed on her heart for over a decade had finally shattered. She turned to look at William, the street thug cunning fading from her eyes, replaced by pure respect. "Boss," Selina changed her form of address, her tone crisp and decisive. "Tell me, who am I looking for in the slums? Even if it's Falcone's illegitimate son hiding there, I'll dig him out for you." William nodded in satisfaction. Selina without worries was the top-tier intelligence operative who could navigate the streets of Gotham like a fish in water. "Look for a homeless man." William walked behind the triage desk, picked up a pen, and quickly scribbled a few characteristics on a sticky note. "Male, around 25 years old. Height, 188 centimeters. Extremely robust physique with perfect muscle definition, but no old knife or gunshot wounds on his skin. Very handsome, but his gaze most likely carries a sense of clear-eyed stupidity." Selina took the note, and as she read the description, the corner of her mouth twitched twice. Selina's inner thoughts: you couldn't possibly be talking about the rich young master Bruce Wayne, could you? What kind of description is that? A male model experiencing life in the slums? Or a gigolo? Someone like that wouldn't last a single night in the East End, even his underwear would be stripped off. That's exactly the point. William tapped the table. He doesn't have a penny on him, no communication devices, and no weapons. But he's a very capable fighter. If he gets into a street brawl, he'll likely choose to defend or run rather than rip the other person's guts out. Selina folded the note and stuffed it into her pocket. "And after I find him? Bring him back?" "No." William leaned back in his chair, a hint of mischievous malice flashing in his eyes. "Stay away from him. Don't let him spot you. You just need to observe him every day. See which bridge tunnel he sleeps under, which soup kitchen he goes to for moldy oatmeal. Watch him starve, watch him get beaten, watch how he struggles in this mire. If he's on the verge of starving to death, or if he gets stabbed and is about to lose his life, then notify me." Selina shivered. Although she didn't know who this person was, she could feel that William was playing a very big game. This perverse hobby of throwing someone into hell just to observe them was even creepier than Gotham's psychopathic serial killers. "Understood." Selina grabbed her leather jacket from the back of the chair and threw it over her shoulders. "Bridge tunnels, sewers, landfills. Leave it to me, I know every rat in Gotham." She walked to the door and pulled up the rolling shutter. Outside, the wind and rain were still raging. "Sis, stay safe," Maggie called out from the top of the stairs, wearing the slightly oversized white lab coat. Selina looked back, gave her sister a bright smile, and made an okay gesture. Then, she leaped gracefully into the rainy night, disappearing into the shadows of Lake Street like a true cat. William picked up his water glass and took a sip. The first move has been made. Bruce Wayne, the rich young master accustomed to looking down on evil from high above, should have changed into tattered clothes by now, standing under some leaky bridge tunnel. The bottom rungs of Gotham will teach him the most vivid lesson about hunger, betrayal, and survival. Only when he truly takes a bloody fall in the mire and completely shatters that idealistic, black and white worldview will the Dark Knight, who strikes terror into the hearts of Gotham's underworld, truly be born. William set down his glass and turned to look at Maggie, who was earnestly flipping through an anatomy atlas. "Maggie, put the book down. Come help me categorize these crates of surgical instruments. For a doctor, practical ability is more important than rote memorization." "Okay, Dr. William," the girl's crisp voice echoed in the underground room. This black market clinic in Gotham's most chaotic neighborhood finally looked a bit like a hospital should.